everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Split, the young adult book review podcast for readers and writers. I'm Brian Cohen, the author of the Ted Saves the World series. That is Robert Scanlon, the author of the Dreamer Chronicles, and he may be tensing through solid matter with some kind of magical epic device.
I had to pull back from my epic device use because I was going to destroy my computer monitor and you're on it. Ooh. So that would be a problem.
I do not want my face to be destroyed. I definitely don't.
But pray tell, what is in your heart of steel this week, Brian?
Well, in my heart of steel and butter, it is the book Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson, a superhero thriller. And it's really something.
Yeah, SuperVillains, man.
Yeah, this is a great book. I was on, and I should mention this, and we should link to this. I was on a podcast the other day called the To Be Read podcast, and it's they talk about what books they've read, and they have authors on there. And we were talking about Steelheart because I had just read it, and one of the other hosts, Jamie, was saying that this is typical Brandon Sanderson, just very good, incredible. Every book kind of gets better from the last one he writes, and now I'm certainly a fan after reading this one.
Well, he seems to be a machine. It's my first Sanderson as well, I must admit. And I think actually, if you're going to consume his books from reading the reviews, it seems like this is not a bad place to start because it's possibly not his most deep or complex, which is surprising. A lot of people brand him as formulaic, and I'm okay with that. You know, if the formula works, it's
when the formula results in something as strong as this, then I think you know, it's okay to use a formula.
Well, yeah, and, you know, it depends how much you read as well. I mean, I read a whole bunch of John Grisham books in a row once. I picked them up in a sale, so I was just reading them one after the other. And after about the fifth one, I started to get bored. But if I'd have read any of those standalone, I would have been turning the pages. And so I think when an author writes to a specific style, there is the possibility that... And it's exactly the same as having the same food for dinner every night. You know, yes. I mean, you just wouldn't do that. So there are some authors that if you overconsume them, then it can definitely be tiresome. So I know I've no idea whether Brandon Sanderson's that way, but certainly some of the reviews for Steelheart seem to be that. I'd just like to shout out. I know we mentioned it last week, but I'd like to shout out to Lucky Calicar, who I hope I pronounced that right. I mean, who knows? It might be Luca K. Lecare. Whatever it is, it's a sensational author name, and you should write.
Yes.
Thanks so much for getting me to get off my butt and get this into the queue, because it had come across both our radars on a number of occasions, and we just didn't get to it. And I'm so pleased because it was epic fun. So
it was epic fun.
We should summarize it.
Yes, I'm ready.
Go.
The epics changed humanity for good. Imbued with incredible powers, they stole and killed, and they conquered. David Charleston was there the day Steelheart took over. He was the only survivor in an attack that left his father dead. He was also the only one who saw the supposedly immortal epic bleed. When David hunts down the Reckoners, a shadowy group of humans bent on leveling the playing field, he'll find that the true heroes don't come from the sky. They just need a little push.
Ooh, I like that.
Man, I should write these for money or something,
you should
right?
offer that as a service. You could have a website, bookbestpageforward.com.
Yeah, we thought of the same website. I wonder if anyone has that yet.
I reckon if people type that into the URL, they might be surprised, you know.
They might be surprised. My first thoughts were, gosh darn it, another series I have to read. It's so good. It's such a great take on superheroes.
Yeah.
It's incredibly well written. It's amazing.
It's tightly plotted, it's fast-paced, it's an action thriller, it's part sci-fi, part paranormal, it's set in a gritty dystopia, it's in Chicago or New Cargo. So, yeah, and what is it about Chicago that invites all these dystopias? Is it what it does to you? Is there something in the water?
Oh yeah, it changes you, man. Changes
I've
you.
got to come over there and have a look.
You do.
It sounds interesting.
You're gonna come. You're gonna come here. I'm gonna come to Australia. It's gonna be great.
It hopefully won't do the same at the same time.
Yeah.
That would be weird.
Gift of the Magi. So, yeah, I think in addition to it just being so good, David is a great character, and I want to go more into that in the writer's perspective.
Yes.
But the whole gang is actually just really awesome to hang out with.
Yes.
I think that's ideal in these like good guys teaming up books. You need, if everybody sounds the same, you're going to get lost, especially in action scenes.
Yeah.
But when everybody has their own little thing, it feels really good to be just one of the guys with the team.
Yeah, that's right. Because you're on the vicarious journey there, where you are David and you are joining this team, and you want to join the team, and he's setting out to find these reckoners and join them. Look, there's plenty of twists and turns, and it's you're right in terms of the bunch of characters. It's sort of it's like they're like a bunch of X-Men, except they don't have superpowers. But it's definitely that, or maybe Mission Impossible is a better.
Yeah, I was thinking Mission Impossible is what came to mind for me.
So Mission Impossible with superpowers is probably how this story reads, actually, and it doesn't try to be anything else. It knows its place. In the same way that a Bond story, James Bond story or a Jack Reacher story does, and same with Bond or Reacher. If you read those over and over and over, you'd also pick up the formula. So, a lot of the reviewers have said, "Oh, yeah, it's Sanderson's formula, and it's kind of fun." But after a while, you just get but that's why people go to McDonald's. Not that I do, but that's why they go. And
people. That's why people.
Well, I am vegetarian, so I definitely don't go to McDonald's. But anyway, aside, but I really like the fact that again, this came through in reviews because I went and specifically looked because I knew how much of a prolific author Brandon Sanderson is and how much of an effect he's had on the fantasy world with his authoring of the Robert Jordan, carrying on the Robert Jordan stuff. So I was interested to see what he did with this. And, it seems as if he often has characters who really have to rely on their wits. Which I love. I love that about stories. It's what I loved about the Jason Bourne trilogy, not YA, of course, but I just love that when you've got not just physical prowess that's making the hero or the protagonist clever, but it's so he has to. He's nothing. He has no superpowers. He feels like a coward because he didn't run and save his dad. He's wrestling with everything. Almost nothing that he plans, even though he's a great planner and he knows all this stuff and he has these ingenious plans, they never work. So, it's wonderful in that respect. So I thought some of the plot reveals were pretty easy to spot. There was one that completely I didn't get at all. It had me fooled. But there was one I guessed way early on, and it didn't matter. It was okay. Some of the foreshadowing was a bit heavy-handed in that respect, and so that's probably the mark of a slightly rushed book, perhaps. If you went back and tempered that would change it. But I actually wrote, it's hard to find fault with this book. It's just solid, fun, fast-paced, great stuff, and I went and did exactly the same as you. Got to read the next one, and discovered that Firefight, the next story, is out, but we're still waiting for the third one, I think, in January. So it's fresh off the presses, this stuff, and worth a read. Quite male. Yeah, it is quite male, and there's only really a couple of female characters in there, and so guys might get a little more out of this. And I mean, I'm a guy, so I don't have a problem with it. I think it is more of a nerdy guy book. But having said that, the story is strong enough, and you do have a very strong female character in there. So
yes, you do,
and that is important. And she's well, I think she's quite believable. She seems.
I think so too.
It's all told from David's point of view. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It's.
And
Go on.
I was just gonna say, just my last little reader's perspective stuff. Magical, interesting bad guys, creative uses of good guy tools, twist endings galore. I'm hooked on the series. So.
Yeah, and it would have been easy to have written the supervillains to be overly plastic, sort of, type characters, and although they play that, I just like the fact that Steelheart kind of goes, well, I've been given this stuff, and what the hell? I'm just going to take a completely selfish point of view, and why is what I'm doing so bad anyway? I kind of like that. I thought that was a clever insight. So we do get some insight into Steelheart, which I think is important. And who wouldn't want a Tensor to play with?
Oh my gosh!
Which is a glove that can.
I would destroy this entire apartment.
See, Chicago. That's what I'm telling you.
It's all starting here.
Writer's perspective. There's a lot to think about, isn't there, from a writer's perspective?
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn.
Yeah. Well, last week we were talking about the here and now and how the characters there were only a couple that were distinct, whereas in this book, all the characters have a distinct quirk that makes them really entertaining, and it's such a great idea for differentiation between your characters.
Yes.
We have the guy who's obviously not Scottish talking about being, or obviously not Irish talking about, I forget, Scottish. He says that he's Scottish, even though in the audiobook he actually has a little bit of a Southern accent. It's great.
Yeah, he comes across as being a Southern guy in the text as well. So even to me, an Englishman living in Australia who's got no idea really about Southern drawl, it still came across that way. So I did see in the reviews some found him annoying. If he just and also some found that David's constant obsession with metaphors and whether they were any good or not annoying. And I actually liked both of them.
Cracked me up. Oh, that was so funny. And maybe that's the writer in me, but cracked me up. I thought it was great.
It's comic book. It's comic book superhero. It's like a Marvel story. I mean, maybe some people have come to Brandon Sanderson, and actually they were the bad reviews. The people that had read, when I say bad, they weren't bad. Doesn't get many bad reviews. It's critical. The critical reviews were from people who had read more of Brandon Sanderson's work, specifically in the fantasy area, specifically where there's a lot more detail. And they just thought it was a bit light on. And for me, it was like going out and having a really great fast food meal that blew you away. Like going to a new burger joint in town and having somebody just blow you away. Right, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
It was only burger and chips. But it was the best burger and chips I've had. And that, to me, is what Steelheart's like.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think that it's just action-packed. There's a huge fight in Soldier Field. I've been to Soldier Field.
All right, okay.
That would be amazing. Oh, okay. So I could picture that. Oh. Yeah, it's real. It's real. It's a big American football stadium.
Okay, nice.
It's huge. Yeah. And so having been at the place where the huge climactic battle happens it's
cool.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So, yeah. And the other thing is the stakes are just incredibly high and they keep elevating.
Yes.
Over and over again, we have more and more things. There's surprise deaths and surprise lives and surprise all sorts of stuff.
Yes, he knows how to surprise well. He is the deft mark of an author there, that's for sure. And one thing I specifically noted is, and it'd be interesting to see how this was handled in the audiobook, but from chapter to chapter in the text, there's leaps. So you get no explanation of how suddenly they're in a new scenario. And I really like that. It again reminds me of the Mission Impossible thing where they're plotting in the office, clearly what we need to do is we need to attack it from a different angle. And then, boom, there's a jump cut and you're in the
Yeah.
new scene. And Sanderson does that every single time. There's none of this. So we raced outside, we jumped in the car, we drove across town watching the bleak buildings whip past as I wondered whether Megan would ever come back into my life. You don't get any of that. You get, he just cuts to the chase with every scene from scene to scene. And I think that's what makes this a great book to learn from as an author wanting to write something very pacey. His jump cuts are fantastic. And you don't feel like there's too much left out, but there's enough left out that when you begin reading the next chapter or the next scene, you get to figure it, plug in the gaps for yourself. You go, oh, this is what they're doing. And it's both reader and writer for me, where he's often putting David and his cronies into a scenario where you think, okay, how are they going to get out of this one? And that's just perfect. It's perfect. Comic book, Batman, Marvel, Mission Impossible, boys geeky drama thriller.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think I like the idea that you should put your characters in situations where you've got no idea how they're going to get out.
Yeah. I think that's really smart, and write yourself into that hole in the outline so that you know how to write yourself out, and then.
Do you reckon he's a plotter or a pantser?
Yeah. He's got to be a plotter.
He's got to be a plotter, isn't he?
There's no way he's a pantser.
Yeah.
It would just, unless he's the best pantser since Stephen King. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, he could be. He could be.
Well, the whole thing about King is that he writes a lot. He's prolific.
Yes.
And although he claims to be a pantser, which obviously he is, but I do know he has plotted from time to time. Just hates the idea.
Sure.
But he clearly has a framework in his mind somewhere, even if it's intuitive and unconscious. He knows what makes a good story. So it's conceivable that Sanderson's just a super fast writer who knows a good story in his head. But no, the amount of foreshadowing that's in there that's really heavily telegraphed, it's got to be plotted.
It's got to be plotted. Yeah, I agree. Any other writing perspective things?
To me, it was an interesting thing because this writing is so far removed from flowery and lyrical. I mean, if you contrast this, say, with the Scorpio Races, it's huge difference. It's chalk and cheese, but they're both really enjoyable books. And I think maybe that's why sometimes things really stand out when something is left undone. So when he's deliberately left an open loop or deliberately foreshadowed something, it's super obvious because everything's pretty sparse and it's running at a hot pace. So and maybe that's only me as an adult author picking that up because we have a show to do about it, and probably I wouldn't normally pick that up. I thought Sanderson's writing style might be his own worst enemy, in that respect.
Well, the reviewers who have read previous books of his seem to agree with you there. Yeah.
Should we head into takeaways?
Yes. First or second?
Will you go first this time?
Okay. I think you need to give your characters one interesting quirk to set them apart from everybody else in the book, and so that people actually care about them.
Yep. And he does that.
Yes, so one win for him.
There's not a book where there's any losers. It's all wins, that's for sure.
Yeah, everyone's a winner. Everyone's a winner.
Yeah,
Number two?
Including the love interest. And I think the love interest here is suitably cute. By the way, in terms of the YA parental advice, it's super violent. I mean, it is really violent. There's lots of deaths. There's lots of blood and gore, and there's only really a bit of love interest and possibly a little bit of intimacy, but nothing that's explicit. So 15, 14-year-old boys be totally happy with the amount of blood and gore and the fact that there's not too much kissing in there.
Yep. Yeah.
But speaking of the love interest, she's cute. It's suitably confusing. So, she sort of runs rings around David and he's got no idea why all this stuff's going on. And there's good plot reasons for that too, which I liked. And she's a bit snarky, which is nice. And she's so ninja. She's really ninja.
Yeah.
So that was, I really liked how that unfolded. It was really nice.
Yeah, for sure. And I bet reading it a second time, you'd pick up on a lot of stuff.
Yes.
With her character.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Number 3.
Number 3, take a conventional genre like the superhero genre and turn it on its head. This is effectively changing the superhero genre into the supervillain genre. And I think that was such a smart idea, and it really pays dividends for him.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it holds the great potential for lots of things to go wrong as well, because how do you fight these people? You know, and the premise is, okay, the premise and the inciting incident is set up right from the start that Steelheart is not immortal. He has a fatal flaw. And, of course, they have to discover the fatal flaw, which to me was suitably intriguing, and I didn't work it out. There were a couple of reviewers who said, it was so obvious. But, you know, I mean...
I was close, but I didn't quite get it right.
I didn't. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He leads you down that track, so you're going to get some idea of what it might be. So I think for people to say, I worked it out right at the start. Well, yeah, hello. He is telegraphing quite a fair bit there. And I think one of the great things is that there's a huge amount of conflict in this book. And, you know, if you look at, my daughter was saying to me the other day, she said, I really don't like rave, which is the religious values classes, and also being of a different religious persuasion than the school she attends, it makes it even worse. So, but without, when I say worse, I mean she's treated really, really well and totally respected. So it's not, she's never forced to do anything that's against her religious will, so to speak. And we're not a religious family, but it's the whole identity thing.
Sure.
And she said, we had to write these stories about creation, but the problem is, Daddy, that there's nothing bad happens. So how do you write a story where nothing bad happens? She's just completely got it nailed. She said, yep, every scene got to have conflict, and Steelheart's packed full. And my wife has just recently finished The Martian, which I read a while ago. And have you read that yet?
Not yet.
Yeah, you should. Whether you read it before the movie comes out or not doesn't matter. I don't think it matters anyway. I think they're both good. But it's a great story of an author who's made it from independent publishing through to a big success. As you know, I'm not saying. Yeah. Brian, he made it strongly from independent success. What? But one of the criticisms that my wife has of the book is that although there is struggle, it's mostly engineering struggle, and pretty much everything that he plans out happens. And it needs a bit of Steelheart stirred in there, where although every plan that David makes in his head, you think, that's brilliant, that's so going to work. And it just doesn't. Because guess what? Life gets in the way, and unpredictable things happen. Or what he guessed about Steelheart wasn't the case, or what he guessed about another epic wasn't the case at all, and so they miscued. And I think that's clever writing, and it makes for an enthralling read.
I completely agree.
That must have been the bonus takeaway. That must have been. Sorry about that.
Bonus takeaway. Well, I have a regular non-bonus prompt.
Go for it.
What would you do if you had an incredible superpower that made you evil the more you used it? Would you try to control it, or do you think it would consume you, and why?
Oh, dear. Absolute power corrupts. But does it?
Kind of funny, because Brandon Sanderson took over for Robert Jordan, and that's one of the central issues in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series.
Is that right?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting.
I haven't read it. I tried. Have you've read Wheel of Time?
Not all of it. First 4 books, I think I got.
They do say it gets very slow in the middle part anyway.
Yeah. I wonder if his parts pick up. I don't know, because he wrote the last 3, I think, the last 2 or 3.
Something like that. I tried to read them. I couldn't. There have been a couple of fantasy series that I just couldn't get into because they were too War and Peace. Too War and Peace for me. One of which is Game of Thrones. I just couldn't. And I've read 4 out of 5. I read 4 out of 5. Look, people say once you get going into it, and the unpredictable nature and the sheer sort of scale of it makes it interesting. But I just couldn't get past had to read 8 chapters, and I got 8 different points of view before anything had really happened.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Pantsers.
Yeah.
That's the problem with them.
Answers. Oh, man. Well, you can answer our prompt of the week over at thesplitbookreviews.com for that episode. I guess that's, 47? I think that's right.
It's right.
Yeah, episode 47. You can email us your suggestions for future episodes, what we should review, at podcast@thesplitbookreviews.com. You can leave us an awesome iTunes review over at iTunes for our podcast page. And next week, we're reading Blood Red Road by Moira Young. And I, for once, have actually started it at the time of us doing the episode instead of it all being last second. So that'll be interesting to talk about for sure. And is that a suggestion? Or is that a recommendation from someone?
It was actually, yeah. It was a recommendation from Stella, I believe. So thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you, Stella. Who recommended a whole bunch of stuff. I can't check that. Don't have my browser open at the moment, but I'm pretty sure. Caught me off guard there. I forgot. But yeah, and that's a good point, though. You know, when we say and you say, you can email us with suggestions. You know, it's not just a tip of the hat. I mean, we actually do.
We take them.
We take these suggestions.
Yeah, we've
very
taken
seriously.
a lot.
We have taken a lot. There are always too many, obviously, to queue up, and we do try and review the best of the best, especially if they have movie connections, because we think that's really what's fascinating to see, you know, just how these things get translated into the big screen.
Has Steelheart been optioned? That would be such a good movie.
That's a good question. I honestly don't know. You'd have to think so. It's perfect, isn't it? I mean,
it's a perfect movie.
It's written for a movie.
Yeah. Well, come back here next week, and we'll tackle another young adult book. This one a suggestion, many of them recommendations from you guys, and we love doing this show, so thank you very much for listening. I'm Brian Cohen, that's Robert Scanlon, and this has been another episode of The Split. We will see you next week.
Yeah, I've got to go figure out this glove because it just doesn't seem to be doing anything. I don't know, maybe I'm not pressing hard enough.
Thank you guys for watching. Somewhere on this page is a subscribe button to the Split channel. We do reviews every week. We would love it if you followed us every single week. Isn't that right, Robert?
That's exactly right. Follow us now. Hit the subscribe button.
Do it.